Let me ask you something honestly. How many of you promised yourself in 2025, next year I will change? And how many of you are still carrying the same habits, the same fears, the same excuses? You see, the calendar changed, but you didn't. And that is not because you are weak. It is because no one taught you how to rebuild, only how to survive. Most people don't fail because they lack talent, intelligence, or opportunity. They fail because they keep waiting, waiting for the right mood, waiting for confidence, waiting for approval, waiting for the perfect moment when everything magically aligns. And the truth is that moment never arrives. Life doesn't send a notification saying, "No, you are ready." It simply keeps moving while we stand still, convincing ourselves that tomorrow will be better. We often believe that once things settle down, once responsibilities reduce, once fear disappears, then we will begin. But life doesn't become lighter before you grow stronger. You grow stronger by moving despite the weight. The perfect time is a comforting illusion we use to protect ourselves from discomfort. It feels safer to delay than to try and fail. But every delay has a hidden cost. It slowly teaches your mind that your dreams are optional. When you wait too long, something dangerous happens. You start normalizing dissatisfaction. You wake up every day feeling slightly unhappy, slightly tired, slightly disconnected, and you tell yourself, this is normal. But deep inside, you know it isn't. You know you were meant for more peace, more clarity, more purpose. Yet instead of listening to that inner voice, you silence it with business, distractions, and excuses. The mind loves comfort zones, even if they are painful. At least they are familiar. Stepping into change feels uncertain, and uncertainty scares us more than unhappiness. So we keep waiting for courage, not realizing that courage is not something you find. It is something you build by taking action. Confidence doesn't come before action, it comes because of action. Think about how many times you told yourself, I'll start from Monday, or after this month, or next year will be different. Years pass, calendars change, but habits remain the same. And slowly regret replaces hope. Not regret for what you did wrong, but regret for what you never even tried. Waiting also creates comparison. When you stay stuck, you start watching others move ahead. Their growth becomes a reminder of your delay. And instead of feeling inspired, you feel discouraged. You forget that they were once uncertain too. They didn't wait for fear to disappear. They moved with fear in their hands. The uncomfortable truth is this: clarity comes after action, not before it. You don't suddenly wake up knowing exactly what to do with your life. You discover it by doing something imperfectly. You adjust as you go. You learn while walking. Standing still never teaches you anything. Every time you take a small step, your brain rewires itself. It learns that change is survivable, that effort doesn't kill you, that progress is possible. But when you keep postponing, your brain learns the opposite, that avoidance is safety. And once avoidance becomes a habit, even small actions feel overwhelming. Rebuilding yourself in 2026 does not require a dramatic transformation. It requires a decision, a quiet, honest decision that you will no longer wait for ideal conditions. You will start where you are, with what you have, as you are, even if you feel scared, even if you feel unprepared, even if you feel tired. There is something deeply powerful about beginning before you feel ready. It sends a message to your mind that you are in control, not your emotions. That discipline can lead when motivation is absent. And that message changes everything. Life rewards movement, not intentions. The world does not respond to plans written in notebooks. It responds to actions taken in reality. And the moment you stop waiting, something shifts. Energy follows effort. Opportunities appear when you move, not when you hesitate. One day, you will look back and realize that the moment you stopped waiting was the moment your life quietly began to change. Not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily, peacefully, and honestly. And you'll understand that the perfect time was never in the future. It was always the moment you decided to begin. Most people hold on to their past, not because it was good, but because it is familiar. The mind prefers a known pain over an unknown possibility, and that is why letting go of who you were last year feels so uncomfortable. It feels like betrayal, as if changing means you are denying your own story. But growth is not disloyalty. Growth is honesty. We often confuse identity with habits. We say, "This is just how I am," when in reality, it is just what we have practiced repeatedly. You were not born with procrastination, self-doubt, fear of speaking up, or the habit of settling for less. These were learned patterns. And anything that is learned can be unlearned. But first, you must be willing to detach from the version of yourself that carries them. Holding on to your old self feels safe because it protects you from expectation. If you remain the same, no one expects more from you, including yourself. But the cost of that safety is silent regret. Every time you repeat an old pattern you have outgrown, something inside you feels heavy. That heaviness is not confusion. It is your inner intelligence telling you that you no longer belong there. Detaching does not mean hating who you were. It means thanking that version of yourself for surviving with the tools it had. That version helped you cope, helped you endure, helped you get through moments when you didn't know better. But survival is not the same as growth. What saved you once may now be limiting you. Many people stay stuck because they keep rehearsing their old story. They introduce themselves internally with labels. I'm bad at consistency. I'm not confident. I always mess things up. Repeating these narratives keeps you emotionally tied to an outdated identity. And the mind works very hard to stay consistent with the story you tell it. The problem is not that you cannot change. The problem is that you keep reminding yourself of who you used to be. And every reminder pulls you backward. When you detach, you stop defending old behaviors. You stop explaining why you are the way you are. You simply accept that you are becoming someone new. Letting go of your old self can also feel lonely. Because some people around you are attached to that version. They feel comfortable with the you that didn't challenge them, didn't grow, didn't outgrow the room. When you change, they feel unsettled. And sometimes they will try to pull you back, not out of hatred, but out of familiarity. This is where inner strength is tested. Because detachment requires courage. Courage to disappoint others. Courage to confuse people who liked the old you. Courage to sit with the discomfort of becoming unfamiliar, even to yourself. But remember this, you are not responsible for staying small to make others comfortable. Your old self had reasons. Your new self has responsibility to your future peace, responsibility to your potential, responsibility to the life that is waiting for you on the other side of this change. And that responsibility is more important than staying loyal to a version of yourself that no longer fits. Detaching also means forgiving yourself. You cannot rebuild while carrying guilt for yesterday. Guilt keeps you anchored to the past. Forgiveness loosens that grip. You did the best you could with the awareness you had. Now you know more, and knowing more invites you to do better. As you step into 2026, understand this deeply. You are allowed to change without explanation. You are allowed to want more without apology. You are allowed to redefine yourself, even if no one understands the new direction yet. Growth often happens quietly before it becomes visible. When you detach from who you were, you create space. Space for new habits. Space for new confidence. Space for a calmer mind. Space for a stronger identity that is built consciously, not accidentally. And in that space, rebuilding becomes possible. One day, you will look back at the version of yourself you were holding on to and realize it was not your truth. It was just a chapter. Important, yes, but not the whole book. And the moment you let that chapter end, you gave yourself permission to write a far better one. The people around you shape you more than you realize, not through what they say, but through what they normalize. Slowly, silently, their habits become your habits. Their mindset becomes your mindset, and their limits start feeling like your limits. That is why growth often feels so difficult, because you are trying to change while remaining surrounded by what keeps you the same. Many people believe that loyalty means staying connected no matter the cost. But loyalty without wisdom becomes self-sabotage. You can love people and still recognize that their presence is draining your energy, clarity, and ambition. Not everyone who has access to your life deserves influence over your future. When you begin to rebuild yourself, your environment becomes very loud. Some people will discourage you openly, others will do it subtly through jokes, doubt, or passive negativity. They may not intend harm. Often, they are simply uncomfortable watching you break patterns they never had the courage to question. Energy is contagious. Spend time with people who complain constantly, and your mind slowly learns to see problems before possibilities. Stay around those who are complacent, and effort begins to feel unnecessary. This is not about judging others. It is about understanding impact. The mind absorbs what it is exposed to. One of the hardest realizations in life is this: some relationships are not bad, they are just expired. They served a purpose once: companionship, support, familiarity. But as you evolve, the relationship stops feeding your growth and starts feeding your stagnation. Holding on out of history alone is emotional attachment, not wisdom. Auditing your inner circle does not mean cutting everyone off dramatically. It means observing how you feel after interactions. Do you feel inspired or exhausted, clear or confused, motivated or drained? Your emotions are honest indicators. They reveal whether a connection is nourishing you or slowly emptying you. Sometimes the drain is not emotional but mental. Being around people who constantly doubt, fear change, or ridicule ambition trains your mind to shrink its own dreams. You start editing yourself before even trying. You stop sharing ideas. You stop believing fully. And eventually, you stop becoming. There is also the challenge of guilt. You may feel selfish for wanting distance. You may worry about being judged, misunderstood, or labeled as arrogant. But growth often requires choosing long-term peace over short-term comfort. You are not obligated to remain accessible to everyone simply because you once were. As you grow, your standards change, not just for life, but for conversations, values, and energy. You start craving depth instead of drama, encouragement instead of criticism, growth instead of gossip. And this shift naturally reduces your circle. This is not loss. This is alignment. Another uncomfortable truth is that some people benefit from the old version of you. They benefit from your silence, your over-giving, your lack of boundaries. When you begin to rebuild yourself, they may resist, not because you are wrong, but because the dynamic is changing, and change threatens comfort. This phase can feel lonely, but loneliness during growth is temporary. Staying surrounded by the wrong people creates a deeper, more permanent loneliness. The loneliness of being unseen, unsupported, and unfulfilled. Choose the loneliness that leads to expansion, not the one that leads to regret. Auditing your inner circle also includes how you engage digitally, the content you consume, the voices you listen to, the messages you replay in your mind. They all count as company. If you constantly feed your mind negativity, comparison, or unrealistic standards, rebuilding becomes harder. Rebuilding yourself in 2026 requires courage to protect your energy, not aggressively, not angrily, but intentionally, with calm clarity. You don't need to announce your boundaries, you just need to live them. Over time, something beautiful happens. When you create space, the right people appear. People who speak possibility, who respect your growth, who challenge you kindly. They don't drain you, they expand you. And being around them feels lighter, not heavier. One day, you will realize that changing your circle didn't make you lonely. It made you focused. It didn't make you cold. It made you selective. And most importantly, it gave you the environment your new self needed to breathe, grow, and finally become real. Most people wait to feel motivated before they begin. They tell themselves, when I feel inspired, I'll work harder. When I feel confident, I'll be consistent. But motivation is emotional, and emotions are unstable. They rise and fall with sleep, mood, praise, failure, and circumstances. If your progress depends on how you feel, your growth will always be fragile. Discipline, on the other hand, does not negotiate with emotions. It does not ask whether you are tired, bored, doubtful, or afraid. It simply asks one question: what needs to be done today? And then it does it quietly, repeatedly, without drama. This is why discipline changes lives while motivation only excites them temporarily. Motivation feels powerful in the beginning. It gives you energy, excitement, and big promises. But it fades the moment discomfort appears, the moment results are slow, the moment effort is required without immediate reward. And that is exactly when most people stop. Not because they can't continue, but because motivation left them alone. Discipline stays when motivation disappears. It carries you through days when nothing feels rewarding. It helps you act even when the mind is full of resistance. And over time, it creates something far more reliable than excitement: self-respect. Every time you do what you said you would do, even when you don't feel like it, you build trust with yourself. Self-trust is the foundation of confidence, not talent, not praise, not success. Confidence grows when your actions match your words. Discipline aligns them. Motivation often breaks that alignment by making you dependent on feeling before acting. Many people misunderstand discipline. They think it means being harsh, rigid, or joyless. But real discipline is not punishment. It is self-care in its most honest form. It is choosing long-term peace over short-term comfort. It is protecting your future self from regret. Discipline does not require massive effort. It requires consistency in small things. Waking up when you said you would. Showing up even when progress feels invisible. Completing tasks without waiting for applause. These small acts compound silently. And one day, you realize you've become a different person, not through intensity, but through commitment. When you rely on motivation, you make your life conditional. I'll try if I feel good. When you build discipline, you make your growth unconditional. You act regardless of mood. And this creates emotional stability. You are no longer controlled by fluctuations in energy or emotion. Discipline also simplifies life. When decisions are already made, mental noise reduces. You don't waste energy debating whether to act. You've already decided. This clarity frees the mind and reduces stress. Ironically, discipline creates more freedom than motivation ever could. As you rebuild yourself, discipline becomes your anchor. It keeps you grounded when emotions fluctuate. It reminds you that feelings are temporary, but habits are permanent. And it allows you to move forward steadily without burning out. Discipline is also deeply empowering. It shifts your identity from someone who hopes to someone who executes, from someone who dreams to someone who builds, from someone who waits to someone who moves. This shift changes how you see yourself and how others experience you. Over time, discipline creates momentum, and momentum creates motivation, not the other way around. When you see yourself making progress, even slowly, motivation returns naturally. But now, it supports discipline instead of leading it. Rebuilding yourself in 2026 will not be about sudden bursts of inspiration. It will be about daily choices made without negotiation, quiet victories no one applauds, effort no one sees, and consistency that eventually becomes your identity. One day, you will realize that discipline did not limit your life. It expanded it. It gave you control over your time, your energy, and your direction. And in that realization, you will understand that motivation may start the journey, but discipline is what carries you all the way forward. Silence is often misunderstood. Many people think silence means weakness, avoidance, or suppression. They assume that if you don't speak, you are afraid. But true silence is not the absence of words, it is the presence of awareness. It is a conscious pause where understanding grows before reaction takes over. Most of the damage in our lives does not come from what happens to us, but from how quickly we react to it. We speak when we are hurt, respond when we are angry, explain when we feel misunderstood, and defend when our ego feels threatened. In those moments, words escape before wisdom arrives. Silence creates the space where wisdom can enter. When you learn the power of silence, you stop giving immediate access to your emotions. You stop allowing others to control your inner state with their behavior. Silence breaks this cycle. It teaches you to observe before you absorb, and observation changes everything. Silence does not mean you never speak. It means you choose when to speak. It means your words are no longer driven by impulse, but by clarity. When you pause, emotions settle. The mind gains perspective. What felt urgent often reveals itself as unimportant. Many conflicts escalate because both sides are trying to be heard, not understood. Silence interrupts this escalation. It disarms tension. It gives you time to listen, not just to others, but to yourself. And often, you realize that not every situation deserves a response. Silence is especially powerful in emotional situations. When someone provokes you, your silence forces them to confront their own behavior. Reacting gives them control. Silence takes it back. It shifts power inward. Internally, silence allows your thoughts to settle. In a noisy mind, truth is hard to hear. Constant stimulation, opinions, and mental chatter drown out intuition. Silence creates stillness, and stillness reveals direction. In silence, you become aware of patterns. Patterns in your thinking, your reactions, your fears. Awareness is the first step to change. Without silence, you remain trapped in automatic behavior. Silence also strengthens emotional intelligence. It teaches restraint, it teaches patience. And it teaches you that peace is not found in winning arguments, but in preserving inner calm. As you rebuild yourself, silence becomes a tool for self-respect. You no longer explain yourself unnecessarily. You no longer argue to prove your worth. Your calm presence speaks louder than words. Silence helps you detach from ego-driven reactions. Ego wants to be right. Wisdom wants peace. Silence gives wisdom the upper hand. It also deepens relationships. When you listen more than you speak, people feel seen. When you respond thoughtfully instead of reactively, trust grows. Silence makes your words more meaningful when you do choose to speak. In a world addicted to noise, silence is a form of strength. It shows you are not desperate for validation or attention. You are grounded. Rebuilding yourself in 2026 requires mastering this inner quiet. Because without silence, growth becomes chaotic. With silence, growth becomes intentional. One day, you will realize that silence didn't make you invisible. It made you powerful. It gave you control over your emotions, clarity in your decisions, and peace in your presence. And that is a power very few people ever learn to use. Many people believe that the solution to their pain is success. They think that if they stay busy enough, achieve enough, earn enough, or prove enough, the pain will disappear. So they hustle harder, push longer, and exhaust themselves, hoping that productivity will heal what they never addressed. But unhealed wounds do not disappear through achievement. They simply hide behind it. Healing is not weakness. It is preparation. When you ignore your inner wounds and rush into growth, those wounds don't vanish. They quietly shape your behavior. They show up as burnout, anger, insecurity, people-pleasing, overworking, and constant self-doubt. You may look successful on the outside, but inside you remain restless. Many people are not lazy. They are tired in a deeper way. Tired from carrying unresolved pain. Tired from pretending they are fine. Tired from functioning without feeling whole. Hustling on top of this exhaustion only deepens the fracture. Unhealed pain makes you chase validation instead of purpose. You work not because you love what you do, but because you want to feel worthy. You say yes when you should say no. You overgive and underrest. And slowly success becomes another form of self-abandonment. Healing requires honesty. Honest conversations with yourself about what hurt you, what disappointed you, and what you never allowed yourself to feel. Many people avoid healing because it requires stillness, and stillness brings emotions to the surface. But avoiding those emotions doesn't make them go away, it gives them control. When you don't heal, you repeat patterns. You attract the same situations, the same relationships, the same struggles, just in different forms. Healing breaks these cycles. It helps you respond instead of react, choose instead of repeat. Healing also restores clarity. When pain is unresolved, your decisions are driven by fear, fear of abandonment, fear of failure, fear of not being enough. When you heal, fear loosens its grip. Your choices become calmer, cleaner, and more aligned with who you truly are. Hustle without healing creates fragile success. The moment something goes wrong, everything feels threatened. A single failure feels personal. A single criticism feels devastating. But when healing comes first, resilience follows. You learn that setbacks are events, not identities. Healing teaches you self-compassion. Instead of harsh self-talk, you learn understanding. Instead of pushing through pain, you learn to listen. And this compassion does not make you weak. It makes you sustainable. It allows you to grow without destroying yourself in the process. Many people fear that slowing down to heal will delay their success. In reality, it accelerates it. Healing clears emotional blockages that drain your energy. It frees mental space. It restores motivation that is rooted in purpose, not pressure. Healing also changes how you measure success. It shifts the focus from constant achievement to inner peace. And paradoxically, when peace becomes the foundation, productivity improves naturally. You work better when you are not fighting yourself. Rebuilding yourself in 2026 is not about doing more. It is about becoming whole. Because a healed mind works with focus. A healed heart builds without desperation. And a healed soul moves with clarity. You don't need to heal everything at once. Healing begins with awareness, with permission to rest, with boundaries, with forgiveness, not for others but for yourself. Forgiveness for not knowing earlier. Forgiveness for surviving the only way you knew how. When healing comes first, hustle becomes meaningful. It becomes intentional instead of compulsive. It becomes a choice, not an escape. One day, you will realize that healing didn't slow you down. It saved you. It gave you the strength to build a life that doesn't just look successful, but feels peaceful. And that is the kind of success worth rebuilding for. Most people don't actually lack confidence. What they lack is trust in themselves. And that trust is not built through big promises or dramatic transformations. It is built through small, quiet commitments kept consistently. Every time you make a promise to yourself and break it, something inside you weakens. Not loudly, but subtly. And over time, that erosion becomes self-doubt. We often underestimate how deeply the mind remembers our own behavior. Your brain is always watching what you do, not what you say. When your words and actions don't align, the mind learns that your intentions are unreliable. And once that belief forms, motivation drops, discipline becomes harder, and self-belief begins to fade. Big goals are inspiring, but they are also intimidating. When the goal feels too large, the mind resists starting. Small daily promises bypass this resistance. They feel manageable, non-threatening. And because they are easier to keep, they create momentum. Momentum is what transforms identity. Keeping small promises teaches your mind consistency. It teaches you that effort does not have to be intense to be effective. That showing up matters more than showing off. And that progress does not require perfection. Many people wait for confidence to act. But confidence is not a prerequisite, it is a result. It grows when you prove to yourself, repeatedly, that you can be trusted. Even in small ways, especially in small ways. A small promise could be as simple as waking up 10 minutes earlier, reading 2 pages, walking for 15 minutes, or sitting quietly without your phone. These actions may seem insignificant, but their psychological impact is profound. Each kept promise sends a message to your nervous system. I am safe with myself. I follow through. Over time, these messages accumulate. They reshape your self-image. You stop seeing yourself as someone who starts and stops, and begin seeing yourself as someone who finishes. And this shift changes how you approach everything else in life. Breaking promises to yourself often comes from overcommitting. We promise too much, too fast, driven by emotion. Then when we fail, we blame ourselves instead of the unrealistic expectation. Small promises protect you from this cycle. They are grounded, sustainable, honest. Consistency also creates rhythm. When actions become habitual, they require less mental energy. This frees the mind for creativity, problem solving, and deeper thinking. Discipline becomes less of a struggle and more of a structure. Keeping promises also builds emotional stability. You feel less chaotic inside because your behavior becomes predictable to yourself. And predictability creates safety. Safety reduces anxiety, and reduced anxiety allows growth. Many people look for validation from others because they don't give it to themselves. But when you keep promises to yourself, you don't need constant external approval. Your confidence becomes internal, quiet, grounded. Rebuilding yourself in 2026 means rebuilding self-trust first, not through intensity, but through integrity. Integrity with your own word, integrity with your own effort. Some days you will feel tired, some days unmotivated. That's okay. Small promises don't require perfection. They require presence. Even doing the bare minimum keeps the chain unbroken. and an unbroken chain builds identity. One day, you will realize that the reason you feel stronger is not because life became easier, but because you became reliable to yourself. You showed up when it mattered, not in grand moments, but in ordinary ones. And that is how real confidence is built, quietly, daily. One small promise at a time. Many people spend a large part of their lives explaining themselves, explaining their choices, their silence, their boundaries, their growth, their pain. They explain because they want to be understood, accepted, or validated. But over time, this habit becomes exhausting. Not because explanation is wrong, but because excessive explanation often comes from self-doubt rather than clarity. When you feel secure in who you are, you don't feel the need to justify every decision. You understand that not everyone will agree, and that is okay. Peace begins when you stop trying to control how others perceive you. The more you explain, the more you hand over your power. Excessive explanation often appears after you've been misunderstood or judged in the past. You try to prevent future hurt by over-clarifying. But instead of protecting you, it keeps you stuck in approval seeking. You start living defensively, anticipating reactions instead of acting authentically. Not everyone deserves access to your reasoning. Not everyone will understand your journey, and not everyone needs to. Your life does not require a public defense. The need to explain excessively often reveals an inner belief that your choices are questionable. But they are only questionable if you doubt them yourself. When you explain too much, you also invite unnecessary opinions. The more details you give, the more room others feel entitled to judge, advise, or interfere. Silence and brevity protect your energy. They create boundaries without confrontation. Learning when not to explain is a form of self-respect. It shows that you trust your own judgment, that you don't need permission to change, rest, grow, or walk away. And that trust is deeply calming. Reducing explanations doesn't mean becoming cold or distant. It means becoming selective. You share with those who listen with empathy, not with those who listen to respond or criticize. This selectivity deepens your relationships instead of weakening them. Many people fear that if they don't explain, they will be misunderstood. But being misunderstood by the wrong people is not a loss. It is clarity. Those who truly care will